this whole movement of get a side hustle and create your dream life and take off whenever you want. Well, maybe that works for some people, but I have a word for that and it's bullshit.
Are you ready to quit your 9 to 5 job and start a business of your own? Well, you're in the right place, my friend. Welcome to the Second Act Success Career Podcast. I am your host, Shannon Russell. I am a former television producer turned business owner, career transition coach, and boy mom. My mission is to help you produce your best life. This podcast will teach you how to get from where you are now to where you want to be, and how to build a business that fits your life and lights you up. Let's get started. Welcome back to Second Act Success. I am very excited for today's episode. I have Julie Noonan here. She is an executive coach, a transformational change leader, a speaker, a consultant, and a futurist. She spent her career working for companies of all sizes, helping people ride the waves of change. But she wanted to make a change once her children graduated college. Julie spent years getting herself in a perfect financial situation to be able to leave everything behind, get into an RV, and see the world. Julie now runs her 2 businesses out of her RV as she travels the country. I promise you'll be so inspired by Julie's story of both her work in the corporate world and her work now as she lives the dream in her second act. Let's get to it. Julie Noonan, welcome to Second Act Success. I'm so happy to have you here.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon. I appreciate it.
Yes, we had a wonderful conversation on
Mhm.
your podcast. And I said, we
Yeah.
have got to have you come here and tell us about your story. You have such an interesting journey, but tell us where your career began.
Oh, wow. I was in grad school, actually. I had studied English literature and I had every intention of becoming an English professor in a college somewhere. I got accepted for a fellowship at Ball State, Indiana.
Mm.
Went down there, and on the drive back, my husband and I looked at each other and I said, I just can't do macaroni and cheese for another 5 years. And so I got a temp job at a bank at First Union Bank in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now they're Wells Fargo. I started out as a temp, and the woman who was running the department was very, very, very senior, very well known. She was paying attention. I was just kind of on the receptionist desk
Mhm.
when there were such things. And
Yeah.
she was paying attention. And one day she called me into her office and I was terrified. She said, Why are you here? And I said, What do you mean? And she said, What do you want to do with your career? She said, You're way overqualified to be a temp. And so I told her, my story. And I said, I'm really kind of looking for, writing, communications, things like that. And the next thing I know, I'm being marched up to HR and told that I was going to interview for a position as an instructional designer. And that's how I started. I started as an instructional designer, learned the real way of doing instructional design from my first boss, who was actually a certified instructional design professional. So it went from there.
What does instructional design entail?
Basically, whatever subject matter there is that you need to teach to adults, this is not like children's curriculum design. This is more designing experiences and content for adult learners, ensuring that all of the objectives are actionable. True instructional design is you're actually changing the behavior of someone or teaching them actually how to do something.
Right.
And so at the end of the session, people will be able to, and all of the verbs have to be active, not passive. That's the basis of it, essentially. And so I did a lot of instructional design for systems, new systems that were coming in at the time. And so I cut my teeth on IT implementation, did a lot of without knowing what I was doing, I did a lot of business analysis work
Mm.
where that is translating from IT language to business language when those teams were conflicted during their design sessions. So I wound up doing that because as a teacher or as a trainer, I had to know the explanation for things myself.
Oh, yeah. You're learning
Yes.
all aspects of the business in order to teach the proper ways to accomplish those tasks.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. I did a lot of leadership development, started out with the techie stuff, and then went into and picked up a lot more of the soft skills as I went along. It
Mm.
was fun.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. And then how long did you do that before you pivoted into your next role, your next act?
Instructional design is one part of the whole training, process in a corporation. So there are instructional designers. They're actually facilitators, the teachers and trainers, whatever they call them, in different organizations. So I had to learn how to do that as well because I also instructed and facilitated. And then there's the curriculum development, which is stringing all of the courses together to make sure that it makes sense for the audiences. In addition, when there is something new that we needed to train, I also had to learn how to do needs assessment, skills assessment. So I had to figure out what those different audiences actually needed in
Right.
order to be able to accomplish the task at hand. All of that put together was what I wound up doing for about 10 years. And then I was hired because I had risen in the ranks at the bank. I was hired to be the training director for a bigger bank up in Ohio.
Oh,
And so I had half of the bank under me as far as delivering learning and development. If you think about branch tellers and those people, for each region, there was an actual pair of training people who we would develop the course in-house and corporate and then teach it to them. And then they would teach it
okay.
to their folks. Then I wound up going to a big consulting firm. And there is where I started developing the idea that I wanted to be a consultant because of the variety, etc. Ernst Young also gave me my first coaching certification. It was in-house to Ernst Young, but that's how I got my first coaching certification. The other thing that happened right around that time was I was realizing that I was only impacting one part of an employee's journey, meaning I was just doing the training part.
Right.
And there are so many other parts to it from a strategic perspective. For instance, recruiting was also, involved with my audience. The HR business partners were also involved with my audience. And I would try to get us together to say, okay, let's look at the audience holistically. By the time they're being recruited to the time they walk in the door, the onboarding. I had the onboarding, but then the HRBP, the business partners often deliver the onboarding. And then the life of the employee, different people were touching different parts
Right.
that journey. And I wanted to be more involved in strategically putting together what that journey would be. So at that point, I got into organization development
Mm.
and then change management right after that. Because one of the things that happened early in my career was I was in charge of the rollout of a big customer relationship management system. But this experience informed what I really wanted to do. I saw all of the problems with it. I'm kind of a risk assessment person. And sure enough, we rolled it out and it was a complete bomb. And I felt bad because my training team was on the front line, like right in front of the people who were struggling with this thing. And it wasn't the training, it wasn't even the system. It was helping them understand how to move from how they used to do it to how they do it now.
Mhm.
Talk to customers is different than they used to because they had to get some more information or how their sales assistants supported them was totally different. So that's when I ran into the idea of change management and got involved with getting certified with ProSci, which is the Gartner of change management, if you will, and became a specialist in change management and human capital. Again, the whole employee journey from beginning to end.
You
Yeah.
really touched all aspects of, like you said, employees' journey through
Mhm.
a company. And you got to utilize those communication skills that you set out to utilize early on in your career. How did you like working for a larger corporation like Ernst and Young compared to the bank corporation? I'm assuming that that was just a game changer for you.
Yes, it was, mainly because I had not been exposed to consulting, and except for at First Union Bank, we hired a very large consulting firm to build the system I was talking about. And so I watched how that organization worked with our organization, and I had some issues with it. So I was turned off from consulting for quite a while until I went to Ernst and Young, and I saw the difference between the two, and I really enjoyed being with Ernst and Young. I think the variety was a big draw for me. The variety in serving different clients, serving different industries. It was never the same from one week to the next. A lot of really smart people to work with. Not that the bank didn't have smart people, let me just say that. But it felt like I was constantly challenged intellectually.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really enjoyed that. A lot of problem solving.
Oh,
And that
yeah.
was the other thing. It wasn't as kind of cut and dry. It was more, here's a problem. Now, everybody get together. How are we going to tackle it? What is everybody's ideas? It was more problem solving. And I really found that I loved that. I went to a small boutique consulting company. Well, it was regional, learned to be a consultant there because at Ernst and Young, I was internal,
Right.
watching the consultants work and supporting them. I wasn't external consulting. I wasn't the client serving part.
Right.
So when I went to the smaller company, and I also moved to Nashville at that point, which was tremendous. I love Nashville. But when I went there, I learned how to be a real consultant from an external perspective. Their model was such that it wasn't the leave on Sunday, come back on Thursday model, because I didn't want that. I had children at home. So it was consult where you live, basically. So I got to know a lot of companies, a lot of executives in Nashville while I was there. And I got to really learn a lot of different industries. So anything from the automobile industry to healthcare was a big one, well-being, et cetera, et cetera. Absolutely loved it. And then change management was relatively new at that point. Not very many companies understood it or would buy it outside of a project that they already had going on. And so the work for what I was doing in Nashville wasn't as robust as it needed to be. And so I would go and do projects for other big companies. So I wound up being the exception to the rule as far as being at home. I wound up traveling a lot more than I wanted to. It was phenomenal. Great company. Met lots and lots and lots of excellent people there. I got remarried and after I decided to no longer travel as much. I left that company and went to the state of Tennessee, who was a former client. And what I liked about that was it was a whole different way of working in a government organization, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Everything felt like everything took so much longer. Everything was so much more scrutinized because we were spending citizen dollars, our tax dollars, which is exactly how it should be. Problem is, conundrum, you're trying to spend wisely, but now you're spending twice as much trying to spend wisely. It's weird. But I enjoyed my time there because what I got to do there was to actually create a change management methodology, state specific, that was really suited more for a government organization and how they do business. When that happened, we were able to then consolidate that change management methodology with a project management methodology with a business analyst methodology. So if you think about it, you've got Project Management Institute, the PMI, what their methodology is. You've got the BABOK, business analyst methodology. We smushed them all together so that it was really evident that those three aspects, in my case, I was doing IT implementations.
Okay.
We replaced a lot of 30-year-old systems. We went from green screen and COBOL programming to the latest and greatest at that time, which was web-based.
Right.
So you can imagine the impact, the change impact there. It was
Mhm.
insane. It was insane. People were like, well, I can't, I don't understand this web development stuff. I'm a COBOL programmer. Okay, let's figure out how we're going to get you the skills you need to move into because COBOL, it may not be dead yet, but it's going that way.
Lots of pushback, I bet.
A lot of pushback, a
Mhm.
lot of pushback, a lot of people worried about their jobs, which I hate. That's the
Sure.
part of my job that I hate is a lot of times the change is merger acquisition. And so people are going to lose their jobs and having to build the communications and coach the leaders on how to handle that change, along with involving the HR folks because, they have to be involved in order to make sure we're doing it all legally. Those were not the easiest ones, but you learn a lot when it's not the easiest ones, that's for sure. After the state, I decided to start my company. I had a couple of interesting projects that I worked on. This was back in 2018. And then I had the opportunity to go back to the smaller consulting company again, which fit in better with my life at that point. My daughters were going out. Well, one had already gone off to college, the other one was going. And I needed kind of a little bit more steady income to make sure those bills were paid. And so I went back to work for them during COVID. There was a big layoff there. So got laid off.
Like so many people during that time.
So many people. And I had my company, it was already set up, moved it to Florida and started up. Was very, very, very fortunate. I had two big, big clients fall right into my lap at the beginning. The good thing about that was I was in the black immediately. The bad thing about that was I didn't have the time to set up all of my marketing and sales and tech stack and all of that at the beginning. I had to just start working.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. You're used to creating systems for all these companies and
And
you have a business and you don't feel like you have your systems in place
oh
probably.
no, no, not at all. Not at all. One of the clients was fairly large and I had to hire subcontractors to do a lot of the work with me. It was just too much, obviously, for one person.
Mhm.
And during that time, I also decided what I wanted to do, with my life.
Mhm.
And as you know, as soon as my youngest daughter got out of college, and about 3 years after that, 2023, we sold everything and we went on the road in our camper. I'm looking forward to being in charge of the rest of my life and my contribution
Mm.
and not having to really take orders or be told that you have 5 weeks of PTO. That's not enough. That's
No.
not enough to do everything I want to do and see everything I want to see. And so now my business, I'm growing it, doing change management projects for a couple of different companies. And I got my official executive coaching certification from the International Federation of Coaches Coaching.
Con-
And thank you. That was so hard. That was an 18-month go back to school practicum, then
Yeah.
coaching sessions, all for free. But I wanted to add that last year in February, I started a separate company, Intuitive Wisdom Coaching. And so I have my consulting company and I have my coaching company, and I take clients in my coaching company as well. So it's
All
fun.
on the road, all as a digital nomad. Right.
Exactly. I did learn, and I think a lot of people learned this during COVID. I don't necessarily need to be in a crowd of people personally,
Mm.
but I need a crowd of people to help me work,
Yeah.
right? I need those ideas. I need those really intelligent people who have different perspectives. And so what I wound up doing was joining a couple of women entrepreneur groups that incredibly supportive. I'm still part of them.
Yeah.
They are enormous helps in this, solopreneur kind of thing that I've got going on. There isn't one person in either of those groups that I wouldn't hesitate to call and say, hey, this problem is rearing its ugly head. What do I do? What have you done before? Do you have anything for this? One person in particular does the same thing, exact same thing as I do. And we could easily have competed with each other.
Mm.
But she also is a change management consultant like I am. And so we'll get on the phone and we'll just share leads. We'll share tools that we've developed. We'll share approaches. We'll share, okay, this company wants me to do a strategic planning offsite. What have you done that has worked really well to get a sales group engaged? What have you done that's worked really well to help them if they are arguing about something? We have found, because we are different in the way we look at the world and our experiences, we wouldn't compete anyway,
Yeah.
because there are people that are more meant for her than me, and the same. And when we share that information back and forth, it makes work so much more fulfilling, because I wind up getting the people I'm supposed to have,
Yes.
not having to convince someone that I'm the person for them from a coaching perspective.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And for you to be able to have the time management business and the intuitive life coaching business as well, I mean, both of those fulfill you in different ways. And to be able to do those on the road, wherever you drive your camper, like, is that the life that you feel like you've always wanted in a sense?
Yeah. We've been out here now for a year and a half. There are some things that are annoying about living in an RV full time. Some of the things are not the things you might think about. Like, for instance, people are like, how can you have your husband there 24/7? That's not the issue for me.
Mm.
The issue for me has been little things. When something happens with the RV and we actually have to take it into the shop, you're taking your house. Think about it. You're taking your house to wherever, and they're supposed to fix it. And how long is that going to take? And while they're fixing it, you have to be in a hotel or an Airbnb or something. That's very annoying.
Yeah, and all of your stuff is in there. I mean, that is an inconvenience for sure. But hopefully that doesn't happen too often. On the flip side, you're able to travel to any state you want to and still be able to earn money and earn, your living. It's such freedom.
It is. And the nice thing is, when we're on the road, right now we're stationary just for the winter. When we're on the road, there's always something to look forward to,
Yeah.
which is the next place. And because we don't have yard work or any of that kind of stuff, it's very seldom that we have a whole bunch of stuff we have to do on the weekend except for grocery shop. So even if I'm working a full 40 or more hours a week, the weekend, when we're somewhere, we can go explore. We can go to the state park, or we can go to whatever attraction there is in that particular city or town. Last year, we went out west. So we went from Florida all the way through Texas, up and over into Montana and back down to Florida. And that was a lot of fun, because that was a lot of places he and I had never seen.
Yeah.
And we also plot places we want to see, interesting musical reference kind of places. He's big into music. And also friends that we haven't seen in a long time. How often do you get to see people that you knew in college outside of a reunion?
Yeah.
Oh, that sort of thing. But Tom is plotting this time more of a family kind of oriented trip. So we're going up the East Coast, which is where most of our family lives. And we're going to be stopping at our different family locations. Obviously, there are things that we want to see up and down the East Coast as well.
That's amazing. And I'd love to ask about doing this once your girls were out of college. Was that a deliberate decision to start this second act, if you will, after the girls were finished and you were finished paying tuition? Or did you dream of doing it a little bit earlier? And is it harder to do it at that stage of life?
Good question. I started dreaming about doing this 7 years before we actually did it. And they were a big consideration.
I'm sure.
I knew that this was not the life that they would want. They were high school and college age
Mhm.
when I started thinking about this, because I was thinking, okay, what happens when they leave? At the time, we were living on a farm in Tennessee with 10 acres and horses and animals and blah, blah, blah. It was a lot to keep up with, and I didn't want that. I wanted to sell the farm, and so it was on purpose. I wanted to get them through college, not only get them through college, but also pay off our debt. Also, I wanted to make sure that they were situated and independent themselves. Now, it's not like, if they got into a big thing, I wouldn't come running to the rescue. That's just a moment thing. That didn't matter where we live. But yeah, that was very intentional. And so when we had the opportunity and I felt like, okay, we're stable enough. The kids are good. They're going to be okay if I'm halfway across the country. Then we left.
And it's great that you did it then too, because so many people, as you know, will put it off and put it off. Oh, at this time. You made a plan to do it at graduation time, right? When they were graduated and settled, debt was paid. Why not now? And the fact that you actually did it, I think, is so inspiring, because so many of us wish to do it and don't now. Life is short. We don't know how much longer we have. So take advantage and don't those regrets. You're so inspiring that you were able to do it.
Thank
And
you.
I tell my kids are younger, they're 9 and 12. I think about when they go to college, I'm going with them, is what I think. And everyone laughs, but like, I'm serious. Like, I want to go where they're going to be. And you can do that, Julie. You can,
Yeah.
you can go wherever they end up. You can go
Yep.
and just park the RV there and be there as long as you want. And that must make them feel so good too, to know.
Yeah. My kids are very independent. We could live next door and I would not see them for a couple of weeks at least. Yeah. What has changed, however, and this is the hardest thing for me, is of course my oldest daughter is married and they thought they couldn't have children.
Oh.
And surprise, she got pregnant. We got a phone call in May last year. We're in Utah or somewhere. And she says, "Hey, I'm pregnant and I'm gonna have a baby in November." Oh my gosh. I'm never gonna be able to leave that baby.
Right?
Well, they live in Florida. That's why this is our home base.
Nice.
And so she did have the baby in December. I was going to be traveling around Florida. I can't do it. I've got to stay here because he's so cute and they need me.
Yes, they do.
For the short term, while he's still so little. So I've been enjoying babysitting and staying in one place for a couple of months. We'll be heading out again in April, and that'll be hard. I won't see them again until June.
FaceTime
it's
works
worth it.
wonders, just
Yeah, but it's not the same.
it's not
Cuddling him.
but you've got that flexibility, and you've done the hard work of building these businesses that give you that flexibility. And that,
Right.
I think, for a lot of my listeners that are thinking about this or are scared to start that second act, it's a way of giving yourself those opportunities that you might not have if you're stuck to that 9 to 5 job, your retirement plan looming over you and all of that. I think it's important to build the kind of future that you want and with the priorities that you hold close.
Absolutely. One of the perfect example, just this past year, we were on the road and my two best friends from college, we are three peas in a pod. The first one lost her husband in March.
Mm,
I'm 61. He was 60.
wow. Horrible.
She didn't get to live her retirement with him. My other best friend wound up with lymphoma and went through a chemo this whole past year. So it just reemphasized to me that even if we only got this past year, if something were to happen right now, we had that year.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't have to wonder or regret not having done it. We did it.
Yeah.
And we're still doing it. And I don't plan to give it up. But I will say, word of warning, is living your dream still takes work. I still have to hustle for business. This whole movement of get a side hustle and create your dream life and take off whenever you want. Well, maybe that works for some people, but I have a word for that, and it's bullshit.
Yeah. I can second that. I can second that. It's work.
It's work. It's not without its scary times. I lost a contract last year and it put us behind financially, and that teaches me lessons. Okay, even if you are 100% booked, you've still got to market. You've still got to get out there and meet people. You still Another thing that's hard on the road, just a warning for folks, is when a lot of people talk about networking, they're really talking about your immediate community or your immediate city. Go out and have lunch with so and so, have a coffee, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it doesn't work that way on the road. I think it's harder to meet people face to face, obviously.
Yeah.
And getting speaking gigs is a little bit more difficult because making those initial connections is a lot harder via the Zoom than it is meeting at a coffee face to face. So that's just another word of warning. A lot of people think that they can make a living just being online. Leave me alone. I'll process whatever. No, it doesn't work that way either. If you're not getting out there physically, you better be getting out there on social media or whatever. And all of it takes money.
I love going to conferences. That's where I meet people and make connections, but that costs money. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yes, it does.
You have to, but then you have to spend the money to make the money. And
Absolutely.
but it is all work. It's all a hustle, like you said, and it's finding different ways to reinvent yourself. Even though you're still in the same business, I'm starting to speak a lot more on stages, and that takes time. That takes time
Yeah.
away from clients, and that takes time away from this. And it's a balancing act.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, it's our schedule. And as long as you're
Yeah.
willing to hustle and put that work in, there's that reward, I guess, that risk reward.
Well, it feels a lot different when you're making money for your own self.
Yeah.
When I worked for the bank, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the people. But at the end of the day, I wanted to clock out and go home and not think about them. And when I had to think about them and was overly stressed because there was too much work and not enough time, I could get resentful
Mm.
because I didn't feel like I was working for my family. I felt like I was working for somebody else's family. And I really care about my clients. I understand that. But when it comes right down to it, everybody is looking to make sure their family is taken care of. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-mm.
That's what it's all about. It's about creating value in the world. And that starts with your family. It starts with you and your family, your community, whatever you call your community.
Mhm.
That's another thing. It's hard to get to really feel like you're contributing to the community. And so I found an excellent way to volunteer that doesn't require me to be in this community. It's the Honor Foundation,
Oh.
which is coaching for special ops service members who are getting ready to retire. It's a whole program. Just got my first assignment and I'm going to be coaching for them. And it's pro bono, obviously, it's volunteer, but I feel like I finally found a community that I can really give back into, so that I believe in.
That's a
It's
perfect
fun.
way to give back.
Well, it feels good.
Let's talk about your podcast because I think a
Yeah.
lot of my listeners will want to jump over and listen to the Roaming with Restless Women podcast.
Yeah, you were an excellent guest on it too. So there.
Thank you.
It started last August. I ran into a company that produces podcasts, and it's also a way to get your message out there. But one of the things that has been constantly in my mind over the last year has been women's wisdom, in that iconic wise woman that lives in every culture, that when the guys go off to, this is total generalization, by the way, stereotypes, but when the guys go off to war, it's the women that keep it all together, that there's usually a wise woman in a community that is the heart or the matriarch of that community. And when things get tough, she's the one that people go to say, so and so died, and she'll take charge of getting all the meals together. That woman.
Yeah.
That's the wise woman. And so my thought was, because the wise woman is part of my brand, what I thought was I could use a podcast, not for business development necessarily. I would love the business, obviously, but what I thought about was, it would be great to hear from all of these women who have all different kinds of lives, who have stories to tell about when they learned something really hard, or how they built their business, or, when they had their first experience with menopause, or they beat cancer, or whatever the case may be, or they're dealing with aging parents. Women's wisdom comes up not just in their work, but in all aspects of their lives. And I want to capture that. So that's what Roaming with Restless Women is. And why Roaming with Restless Women? It just came out of me when I was discussing the title of my podcast. I didn't want to name it the same as my company, Intuitive Wisdom. And that just came out. And I thought, because roaming, my lifestyle, and people might be interested in that, as you've been asking me questions about it. And then also restless. Restless occurred to me not in a negative way, but there's the restlessness that makes you want to continue to learn, that makes you want to continue to give, to continue to pour yourself into creation instead of destruction. And I think, especially during this time when I feel like women's rights are being chipped away, we're being discounted more than we have been in a long time, we need to continue to share that wisdom and bolster each other up, because nobody else is going to do it.
What a beautiful message. And the stories you share are just that. Like, you can get those gems of wisdom from others, and that's how we learn and grow and become better versions of ourselves. It's from learning from others and lifting each other up. And it goes back what we talked about earlier with the other woman who's a change management coach as well, and how you could have competed, but instead you're lifting each other up and sharing your wisdom.
Yes. My generation grew up in the corporate workforce, following the example of Murphy Brown and, Barbara Walters and the tough girls, very tough girls. They had to be, right? They had to be. The unfortunate part about that is, in being tough and in competing against the male-dominated patriarchy of the work world, they also started competing with each other because they didn't have another model.
Right.
And I think with particularly since COVID, and with the younger generations coming in and changing the way we work pretty dramatically, which I'm very happy about, by the way, the whole idea of competing is destructive and not constructive. The pendulum's going to swing too far, and we're going to collaborate until we don't make a decision ever. It'll go that way, and then it'll come back to the middle again. But it's not about competing. It's about holding each other up and advocating for your own strengths, showing your own abilities without putting someone else down, or trying to get there first, or using your ego as a weapon. And I think that we're going there. We're getting to that place, and I'm really happy about that.
That's great. I agree. I'd love to wrap things up by asking you, what advice do you have for other women who are embarking on their second act and maybe even thinking about going mobile and roaming and taking this big life adventure? What would your advice be?
Oh, my advice would definitely be, solidify in your head what you think you want to do, write it down, read what you wrote every morning, adjust it when you need to, but write it as if it had already happened, which is what I did. I don't use a vision board, but I did. I wrote a story about what this was going to be like. Tom and I are sitting at our campsite with the fire going, with our Bud and Bud Light.
My favorite.
Yeah. And, enjoying the night air, et cetera, et cetera. Not worried about finances, doing the work that we love to do, enjoying our family. The girls come over with their significant others. We hang out. And then the next day we go and we explore a national park. I wrote all of it out, like in detail. Having that in my mind every day allowed me to, when I looked at making a choice, it allowed me to make that choice from that perspective and not my current perspective. So is this a choice I would make if I was living on the road, blah, 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 blah. And you focus on it enough, your choices and your decisions are going to point in that direction. May not be easy. It's not magical, It's just changing the way you think. So make your vision.
Make your vision. That is beautiful. And then you're right. The more you visualize it and plan it out, the sooner it really becomes more tangible than you had
Mhm.
ever imagined.
Yeah. Yeah, it really forced me, particularly I'm not great at financial management, I have to say. It's numbers, I don't do numbers. But anyway, one thing that it really helped me do was pay down that debt. It made me much more eager to get that done
Mm. You had that
because
goal.
I wasn't living for that immediate thing. I was really living for where we are now. So
I love everything that you've done and that you're working towards.
thank you.
It's so inspiring. But Julie, I want to make sure that my audience can connect with you. So what are the best places for them to find you, listen to you, all of the things?
LinkedIn is number one. You can find me, Julie Noonan. And then if you want to listen to the podcast or watch the podcast, it's on YouTube. Just search for Roaming with Restless Woman. And then also it's on the major podcast channels, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, all those.
Great. Great. And
Yeah.
I'll link to those and your businesses and everything in the show notes. And Julie, this is so wonderful. We really could have talked all day. So
Oh,
I
oh,
want to let you go, but I appreciate you taking time on the road to share your journey with us and inspire others. Thank you so
well,
much.
thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. I hope you found some gems of inspiration and some takeaways to help you on your path to second act success. To view show notes from this episode, visit secondactsuccess.co. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Reviews only take a few moments and they really do mean so much. Thank you again for listening. I'm Shannon Russell, and this is Second Act Success.